My sister has attempted suicide not once, but twice. Her social media profile do not depict anyone who would look like she would be suicidal. Her pictures do not show any signs of sadness or internal turmoil. However, 2 weeks ago, my mom and I received a message from her saying that she was planning on taking her own life by taking her antidepressant pills. We pleaded for her not to, but we never received a response. We thought she had taken her own life, but thankfully her husband had stopped her by calling 911. Thoughts and acts of taking one's own life is something many of us have a hard time understanding and accepting. In fact, if directly affected, it is more confusing and devastating and or paralyzing. Roughly 1.5 million people will attempt suicide annually, but in the wake of the aftermath, those of us intimately affected are still left feeling uncomforted. As someone who is directly affected by attempted suicide, I know how emotionally traumatizing and personally challenging it is to accept and comprehend. It can affect us by ways no one can ever imagine. How do you talk to someone who just attempted suicide? To a mother who thought she nearly lost a daughter? To a brother, a friend, a coworker who doesn't know what else to do after learning about someone who just attempted suicide? How do you even begin to start a conversation about suicide to someone? No matter how hard it may be, talking about it is necessary. What we say and do matter during recovery. How we handle the aftermath will directly affect those who are experiencing pain and unmitigated suffering. Our actions can either make the problem persist or it can help. Our actions matter. If we all learn to open ourselves up to acknowledging the fear of suicide, only then can we be part of a solution. So I urge you to be a part of this solution and learn how to support each other of yourself and of others who need it. I first want to educate you on what suicide is, how to support someone who is recovering from attempted suicide, and how you can cope and learn from the aftermath of attempted suicide. Most of us lead a normal life and not realizing how many people around us are suffering from suicide ideation. People who attempt suicide and or worse, people who commit suicide. Suicide ideation is also known as suicidal thoughts or thoughts of taking one's own life. Suicide ideation is prevalent in the general world population, and according to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, an estimated 9.3 million adults reported having suicide thoughts in the past year. These figures are highest among adults aged 18 through 25 and can lead to attempted suicide. Suicide attempt is non-fatal, self-directed, potentially injurious behavior with intent to die as a result of the behavior. A suicide attempt might not result in injury. This is occurring according to the National Institute of Mental Health. Studies today indicate that people who attempt suicide will also make suicide plans. According to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, 13.6% of students made a plan about how they would attempt suicide in the previous 12 months. Some who attempt suicide will go on and die by suicide. Suicide or death by suicide is an act of taking one's own life. According to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, on average there are 123 suicides per day. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in the world. Now we can incorporate our knowledge about suicide and help someone prevent them from attempting and or committing suicide. Suicide needs to be taken seriously. Dismissing a threat of suicide is not only dangerous, but it can result to suicide. According to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, suicide is a serious but preventable public health problem, but that can have a lasting harmful effects on individuals, families, and communities. So please talk to that person if you are trying to prevent suicide and ask what you can do to help him or her. By identifying and supporting people at risk, we offer immediate help. Contacting a lifeline for assistance and support, like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, can prevent suicide. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, the number of suicide deaths goes down when somebody follows up with the at-risk person. Take action. Contact a doctor, a mental health provider, and/or take them to the hospital. Whatever it takes to stop or help aid in suicide prevention, do so. According to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, you can also prevent suicide by removing the means such as guns, knives, or stockpiled pills, or if your loved one asks for something, provide it, as long as the request is safe and reasonable. Now that we have learned about suicide and how we can help someone who is suicidal, what about what happens after? How can we support ourselves? It is vital that we also look after ourselves after helping somebody attempt suicide, as it can be emotionally draining. Tell people about the suicide attempt. Get support from your healthcare provider, such as a therapist. Contact a suicide prevention hotline for yourself. Practice self-care, making sure you get adequate sleep, exercise, and balance. Find a support group to find solace in others who have the same experience. According to the suicide.org, immediate treatment without stigma should be our ultimate objective, because when more people receive treatment for mental illness, there will be fewer suicide. I hope all this talk about suicide becomes less stigmatic and less scary for people. Suicide is real, and the more we talk about it, the more comfortable it is for everyone to spread awareness. We can all use someone to talk to about the smallest of issues. We are never alone in this world, and neither are the ones who have suicidal thoughts. We shall not ignore the issue of suicide. If we all come together and spread awareness on suicide, we can all be able to prevent suicide. I urge you to do all your own research online or call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline to learn and spread awareness of suicide. Do it now. If I hadn't done my research about suicide prevention or didn't act immediately after my sister's attempted suicide, my sister may not be here today.